Welcome to Cheat Sheet Tales, where secrets slip, lies unravel, and the truth always has a twist. Real stories, raw confessions, and shocking betrayals. Drop a comment if you've ever caught a red flag too late. Now let's get into today's tale. On my 19th birthday, my mom ordered me to apologize publicly to my cousin for trying to outshine her. Just because I got a scholarship in front of everyone, she said, she thinks she's better than us, just because she can read. 5 days later, she smirked. Still think you're special? And my answer was, if you've ever wondered what it's like to be resented by your own family for trying to succeed, let me walk you through the birthday that changed everything. It was my 19th birthday, when everything boiled over my mom. Virginia called me out in front of my entire extended family, during what was supposed to be a casual backyard barbecue. She made me apologize to my cousin Belle for trying to outshine her, because I had earned a full-ride scholarship to Emory. No congratulations, no pride. Not even a neutral silence, just straight-up public humiliation. She thinks she's better than us, just because she can read. Belle giggled loud enough for everyone to hear, like. She was waiting for this moment. Laughter rippled through the backyard, not. Everyone laughed, but no one stopped it either. I didn't say anything at first. My throat closed, my hands were trembling over my paper plate. I looked to my sisters, Delilah and Joy. They didn't look at me. No one did, just my mother staring at me, lips pursed like she was waiting to see how I'd handle the shame she just served me in front of a dozen people. Still feel the sweat on my back, sticking my shirt to the cheap plastic lawn chair. That was the moment. Everything shifted. I knew something had to change, but before I get to what happened after, let me go back a bit. I was never the favorite in. My family being smart was not admired. It was suspicious. Being quiet meant you were hiding. Something being ambitious meant you were trying to embarrass the rest of them from the time I was a kid. I found comfort in books. We didn't have much growing up, but I'd ride the bus 2 towns over to the library in Warner Robins just to get lost in stories. My mom worked 2 jobs and made it clear sacrifices were not so. I could be better than everyone else, but so I could stay in my place. And respect who raised me. My cousin Belle was the golden child. Not because she was exceptional at anything in particular, but because she stayed close. She stayed loud. She echoed whatever my mom said, and my mom loved that she dropped out of community college after a year and started reselling cheap jewelry on Instagram to them. That was real. Hustle me. Readings, scholarship packets, and applying for internships made them roll their eyes when I got my acceptance letter to Emory with a full scholarship. I held off sharing it. I knew they wouldn't take it well, but word got out thanks to my high school guidance counselor who posted about it on Facebook. Suddenly, people at church were coming up to Mom saying things like, "You must be proud," and that Mabel is going places she hated, that she hated the attention that wasn't about her in the days leading up to my birthday. Barbecue, tension was thick. My mom started making little digs. "Oh, college girl's too busy to help around the house. Now, huh?" She'd say, arms crossed, when I was writing an essay. When I tried to help Belle with her business website, she told me, "Not everything needs to be fixed with your fancy words." Then came the barbecue. The backyard was full of mismatched folding chairs and red Solo cups. Aunt Lila was working the grill like she was in a Food Network competition. I tried to keep to myself. Talked to a couple of the kids, but mostly I was counting down the minutes until I could leave. I didn't want a party. They threw it to make themselves feel better, like they were still celebrating me in their own way. But I could tell from the moment I walked in. It wasn't about me. It was about putting me back in my place. That moment when my mom tapped the glass with her fork was surreal. Everyone quieted like we were in church. She looked at me face tight. "Mabel has something to say to Belle." That was all she said. Just put me on the spot like that. I stuttered. Say what she owes her cousin? An apology? My mom continued, now addressing everyone she didn't mean to. Make her feel less than. But that's how it came across. I opened my mouth, but Before I could speak, Belle chimed in loud enough to cut through the crowd. She thinks she's better than us just because she can read a wave of laughter. Some awkward, some genuine, all of it hit me like a slap. I looked around. Delilah avoided eye contact. Joy looked like she wanted to shrink into the ground. Dad, he was on the porch, sipping a beer, watching without getting involved, same as always. I don't even remember what I said. I think I mumbled. Something like, "I'm sorry if I made anyone feel that way." But it wasn't an apology. It was survival that night. I didn't eat my birthday cake. I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling of my room and realized I wasn't going to stay here. Not one more day than I had to. The real kicker came. 5 days later, I had just received an email from Emory inviting me to join the honors cohort, a competitive program for students who demonstrated leadership and academic excellence. It came with a research stipend and extra mentorship. I was still reading it when my mom walked in and glanced at the screen. "What's that now?" she asked already. Frowning Emory. "They want me in the honors program." She scoffed. "Still, think you're special." Looked at her for once. I didn't flinch. "Yes," I said. Just that one word. No anger, no argument. And something shifted in her face. Not shame, not regret. Just discomfort. Like I had finally become someone she couldn't control with sarcasm or silence. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't explain myself. I didn't offer her space to feel better. That was the moment I took my power back. I didn't move out the next day. I wasn't that brave. But that moment when I looked my mom dead in the eye and said, "Yes, I do think I'm special," something inside me solidified. Not anger, not sadness, just a quiet kind of resolve. I realized I wasn't going to fight anymore. I wasn't going to beg to be understood by people who chose not to understand me. I started preparing quietly. I had 2 months before move-in day at Emory. In those weeks, I stopped trying to be included. I stopped trying to impress anyone. I stopped volunteering to help with Belle's boutique photo shoots, or pretending to laugh when she showed me her business ideas. I became invisible in the house, which somehow made me feel freer than I had in years. I worked a part-time job at a secondhand bookstore in downtown Mon. I'd take the bus, come home late, and go straight to my room. The store didn't pay much, but I loved it there. The owner, Mrs. Elsie, was this retired teacher with white curls and a voice that could slice through stone. She reminded me of what women could be when they weren't afraid to take up space. "You walk like someone's always watching you," she told me. "Once as we stocked shelves, stop. That ain't nobody that important." We weren't close, but she became the first adult who ever spoke to me like I had value. Without trying to mold me, that store became my refuge. I'd stay late, sometimes reading behind the counter, pretending that my real life had already started, and that my house on William Street was just something I imagined back at home. Things got quieter, or maybe I just stopped listening. My mom didn't bring up the barbecue again. She didn't bring up Emory. Either she spoke around me like I was background noise. Belle came over a few times a week, usually to complain about her slow sales and how people these days don't appreciate local business. I said nothing. I'd learned. It didn't matter. In that house, silence spoke louder than logic ever could. One evening in late July, maybe a week before I was due to leave, I overheard my mother on the phone with Aunt Lila. I hadn't meant to. I'd come into the kitchen to grab some water and paused just behind the doorframe when I heard my name. "She's getting too big for her damn britches, Mom. Said all this honors and campus jobs like she's some damn Rockefeller." A pause. "No, I ain't worried about her. Let her go. She'll be back the minute things get hard. You'll see these college types always come back thinking the world owes them something." Another pause, then laughter from both of them. That laughter hurt more than anything she said. It wasn't what they believed. It was how sure they sounded about it. They didn't think I'd make it. They didn't even consider the possibility. That night I packed everything early. I started putting things into boxes and suitcases. Even though I wasn't leaving for another 6 days. I didn't cry. I wasn't even mad. Just Needed to physically start removing myself from that space. The night before I left, my dad came into my room. It was late, and I was folding clothes into a tote bag. He stood there awkwardly in the doorway, arms crossed like he was waiting for me to say something. He cleared his throat. "You need a ride tomorrow." It was the first thing he'd said to me directly in weeks. "I've got it covered," I said, not looking up. He nodded slowly. "Well, guess you'll be all right." There was no hug, no advice, but in his own quiet, distant way, I think he meant it the next morning. I left while the sun was still low. My friend Sasha, one of the only people from high school I stayed close with, came to pick me up. She helped me load everything into her dad's truck and didn't ask questions when I didn't say goodbye to anyone as we pulled away. I didn't look back. Not once. The first weeks at Emory felt like breathing real air after years in a sealed room. I was scared. Don't get me wrong, but I wasn't afraid of failing. I was afraid of finally being seen, of someone calling me out for faking it, for not belonging. But that didn't happen. My professors knew my name. My roommates asked me questions about my goals. I was surrounded by people who read for fun and dreamed out loud. I wasn't special anymore, but that was another. Suddenly, I was being asked to tell the same story that once made me the outcast of my own family, and every time I told it, it became less about proving something and more about giving someone else permission to be honest. The more I leaned into that voice, the less I heard the one in my head telling me I was being too much. Then out of nowhere, I got a text from Belle. Just her name lighting up my screen made my chest tighten. "You got time to talk?" I stared at it for a long time. Not because I didn't know what to say, but because I wasn't sure I wanted to say anything eventually. I just typed about what she responded. Almost instantly. "I've been thinking a lot. Can we meet up?" I didn't owe her anything. She'd humiliated me. She'd stood beside my mother while I was shoved into the dirt. But a part of me, against my better judgment, was curious. So I said yes. We met at a cafe in downtown Mon, the kind of place she used to mock for being too bougie. She showed up in wedges and a tailored jumpsuit. Her hair was slipped back, makeup full face, like she was walking into an audition. She sat down, pulled her sunglasses off and said, "You look good, I just nodded you too." We ordered small talk. A few awkward pauses. Then she leaned back in her chair and said, "You really hurt their feelings, you know." My stomach turned, but I stayed still. "I didn't lie," I said, careful not to let my voice waver. "I'm not saying you did," she replied, "but you kind of aired out all the family drama in public. That wasn't drama, that was my life." She went quiet. For a moment she looked unsure of herself, then she sighed and swirled her straw in her cup, like she was working up the nerve. "Listen," she said. "I was jealous." "Okay, I've always been jealous you had something." None of us had options. I just didn't know how to handle it. I didn't say anything. She kept going. "You were always quiet, always in your books, but you had this confidence, like you didn't need people to like you." That scared the heck out of me. I wanted to be angry. I wanted to throw back every insult, every laugh, every comment she'd made that chipped away at me. But all I felt was tired, Belle. I said, "Finally, I didn't have confidence. I had survival instincts." She blinked. I was quiet because I learned early that speaking up made people mad. I stayed in my books because that was the only place I didn't feel wrong. That wasn't confidence, that was coping. She looked down, fiddled with her straw again. "Guess we all had our own ways," she mumbled. We sat there in silence for a while. Two grown women sitting on opposite sides of a life. Neither of us fully understood when the check came. I paid it not out of grace, out of finality. "I'm glad you reached out," I told her, "but I'm not coming back to that version of us." She nodded. "I get it." And weirdly, I think she did. That meeting didn't fix our relationship. We didn't become friends. We didn't have some big reconciliation, but it was a kind of closure. She saw me for the first time. Maybe not as someone to admire, but at least as someone she couldn't pretend was invisible anymore. And after that, I kept going. I kept writing, speaking, studying, mentoring, living. I stopped checking my mom's Facebookie. Stopped trying to guess how the family was spinning the story. I didn't need to know, because for the first time in my life, I wasn't writing from behind closed doors. I wasn't whispering into empty rooms. I was being heard. I didn't hear from my mom directly for another few months. Not when I got invited to present at a student leadership panel in Atlanta, not when the local newspaper featured me in a short piece titled From Min to Emory. One student's journey to rewrite her story, not even when I posted about starting a campus group to mentor first-generation students. But I knew she was watching people back home, had started whispering a friend of a friend mentioned at church, that Virginia's daughter was doing big things. That's how it always went. News would ripple through town, long before it reached my doorstep. And then, one afternoon in November, as I was packing for Thanksgiving break, I got a voicemail. Unknown number. Southern Draw Me mother's voice. Hey, it's your mama. Thought maybe we could talk you coming home for the holidays, or anyway. Call me. That was it. No. I'm proud of you. No acknowledgement. Just an invitation, wrapped in years of unspoken tension. I didn't call her back instead of going home. I spent Thanksgiving with a friend's family indicator. Her parents were warm and talkative. Her siblings teasing in that easy way. I never had they prayed before. Meals passed dishes with both hands and actually listened when someone spoke. It was the kind of chaos that didn't sting that night her mom gave me a plate to take home and said, "You remind me of my niece always going places." I almost cried right there at the door, not because I wanted her to be my mom, but because she saw something in me without trying to claim it. She didn't twist it into guilt or obligation, she just named it and let me keep it. But even peace has a way of being interrupted in early December. I got tagged in a Facebook post. It was a photo from that mentorship event I'd spoken at in Mon, reposted by the community center. It had my name, a quote about owning your voice, and a few hundred shares. I didn't think much of it until I saw the comments. Some were kind, supportive teachers, former classmates, strangers. But a few, well, don't. She thinks she's Oprah. Now she forgot who raised her. Funny how some people act like they made it when they're still on scholarships. And then the one that stopped me. Cold. Some people turn their backs on family and call it growth. That's not success. That's shame in disguise. Virginia Maddox. My mother, commenting under her full name. There it was, a public message meant to wound in the most casual way. No direct call, no conversation, just a digital jab. To remind me that no matter how far I went, she still wanted to narrate the story for a full hour. I sat there in my dorm room, phone in hand, just simmering. The old me would have cried, the teenage version of me would have spiraled, deleted posts, questioned everything. But this version, the one who had worked, scraped, built her sense of self from literal scraps. She got up, she didn't respond instead. I drafted a blog post not about my mom, not about Belle, not about revenge, but about the cost of finding your voice in a family that spent years trying to silence you. I titled it, "When Your Success Sounds Like Betrayal to the People You Love." It went viral, not like celebrity viral, but real viral, quiet viral. The kind of viral where the inbox fills with DMs from other girls, other sons, cousins, students saying, I felt every word that post became my pivot point. The university asked if I'd consider turning it into a column for the student paper. I said yes. That column became a monthly feature, and that feature led to opportunities one couldn't have imagined a year before: speaking gigs, podcast interviews, panels with women I used to follow on social media, but never dreamed I'd sit beside and through it all. I never once called home, not out of spite, not even out of pain, but because I didn't want to lose myself in their version of me anymore. Around March, Joy sent another message. This one was longer, hey. I just want to say, I read your column. I didn't know you felt all of that. I guess I never thought about it from your side. I'm sorry for not standing up for you that day at the barbecue. I stared at it for a long time. Not because it hurt, but because it meant more than I thought it would. I wrote back. Thank you, I don't blame you. We were all surviving in our own way. She sent back a heart emoji. It wasn't much, but it felt like a crack in the wall, and sometimes a crack is all you need. I didn't forgive my mother, then maybe not ever, but I stopped waiting for the apology that would never come. Because somewhere between my first scholarship letter and that last speaking gig, I realized my healing didn't require her participation, and that was the real revenge. Spring came fast. That year, my last semester before summer started. Buzzing with plans, a research assistantship, another speaking engagement, and an unexpected invitation to attend a leadership summit hosted by Emory alumni. I still worked part-time at the resource center, helping first-gen students like me draft essays and prep for interviews. Every single one reminded me of who I used to be. They were smart, scared, apologetic, saying things like, I'm not sure if this is too ambitious or I don't want to seem full of myself. I told each of them what I had once needed, someone to say to me wanting more. Doesn't make you ungrateful. It makes you human. One afternoon, I stayed late with a student named Mariah who was applying to a summer program in New York after we submitted. Her application, she looked at me and said, I feel like I can breathe different when I'm around you. I don't know what it was about that moment. Maybe it was how sincere she sounded. Maybe it was the way she said different. Like breathing easier wasn't something she was used to, but after she left, I cried for the first time in months, not because I was sad, but because I realized I had become what I needed: a witness, a mirror, a soft place, and I did it without needing to be small for someone else's comfort. I didn't plan on going back to making for the summer, but life has a funny way of testing you just when you think you've settled into a rhythm. Mrs. Albright called me again. Her summer mentorship program had grown. It was no longer just a few sessions at the community center. It had turned into a full initiative with partnerships across the county. She wanted me to co-lead a portion of the curriculum I can pay. She laughed over the phone. Not much, but better than pizza. And hugs. I told her I'd think about it. And then I told myself the truth. I wasn't scared to go back. I just didn't want to be seen in proximity to the people who had once tried to make me ashamed of becoming myself. But this time it wasn't about them. It was about the girls like me who still lived in that town, who still rode the city. Bus to the library whose, my mother's height. And when the moderator asked, what was the moment you realized you were no longer trying to survive? I told the truth. It was the moment I stopped needing to be liked by people who only loved me when I was quiet. The audience went still. I saw someone in the back wipe their eye and I smiled. Not because I wanted to hurt anyone, but because I had finally said it. Without flinching, somewhere around my 24th birthday, I got another voicemail from my mom. Short, tired, your aunt. Lila's not well. Might not be around much longer, just thought. You should know, no request to come visit, no. I miss you, just a report. I didn't call back. Not out of spite, but because I had learned to release people without inviting them back in grief. I learned doesn't always come from loss sometimes. It comes from accepting that the apology will never arrive, that the embrace will never happen, that you can love people from a distance and never ever need to go back. Now, I still walk into rooms where people underestimate me. I still get messages from old classmates who say things like, didn't expect you to end up where you did, and every time I just smile, not because I proved them wrong, but because I proved myself right. I was never too much. I was never too ambitious. I was never arrogant. I was just ready to build a life where being proud of myself didn't require permission, And so when I think back to that moment standing in a backyard with everyone watching my mother smirking, asking, "Still think you're special?" I only have one answer. Yes, I do, and I don't need you.